Alright, so The Boy and the Heron was the first Ghibli movie to be announced after I started this little video series, which I think is kinda neat. Actually, maybe Earwig and the Witch was. I feel like I remember knowing about its existence when I made the first batch of these. Whatever. Well, in other news, The Boy and the Heron is also the fifth movie Hayao Miyazaki has come out of retirement to make? Something like that. I know the first time he said he'd retire was after Princess Mononoke, so this dude has been coming out of retirement for over 25 years now. Absolutely insane. I gotta say, there's something comforting about the fact that Miyazaki just never seems to stop. With all the incredibly talented people in the anime and manga industry that died way too young and clearly had so much more art to give to the world, Hayao Miyazaki is just a fire that keeps on burning, seemingly no matter what. And it's nice to know that when he does finally set his pen down for good, he'll do so having given everything he possibly could have to the world of animation. And for that, I will be forever grateful, because the man makes some really good movies. So, let's talk about one of them. As is the norm for this video series, I will be discussing spoilers for this movie, so you have been warned. I very much enjoyed The Boy and the Heron, and I guess I'll begin my discussion of it by telling you how I watched this movie, which was actually at a movie theater. Of course, I have seen other Ghibli releases in the theater before when I was a kid, but when it came to watching these movies for the purposes of this video series, obviously there weren't any theaters showing most of these multi-decade old films, and it's also just more convenient to watch them at home, so that's what I did. And if you're considering whether to watch The Boy and the Heron right now in the theater or just waiting for it to come out on streaming services, I would say check it out in the theater. The gigantic screen really adds a lot in scenes that have these big sweeping shots or camera pans over grandiose settings. Having surround sound for the audio was also cool and good, although I wouldn't say it revealed anything about the sonic quality of the film that I couldn't have gained otherwise. The music is very nice, it's about what I've come to expect from Miyazaki. The voice acting was also predictably very good. I watched this movie in the English dub because it was the only thing playing at the theater I watched it at. I usually at least attempt to seek out the Japanese dub for these films and pretty much all anime. That's just because I'm more of a subtitle enjoyer in general, but like I said, Ghibli dubs have a really good track record, so I wasn't worried and I wasn't disappointed. What did surprise me is that in this film, much like The Wind Rises, Miyazaki's last film from a decade ago, explicitly takes place in real-life World War II. And whereas The Wind Rises felt to me like a showcase of how war encourages individuals who would have otherwise lived happy and fulfilling lives with happy and fulfilling relationships to get fed through the meat grinder and become just another brick in the wall, The Boy and the Heron leans a bit more into the realm of exploring and responding to the personal psychological impacts that come from not necessarily being involved in war, but existing in a world that is consumed by war. Obviously, as it is the first scene in the movie, Mahito, our main character, loses his mother in a fire presumably caused by American air raids. And the memory of this haunts Mahito for almost the entire rest of the film. I think now would be a good time to point out that Hayao Miyazaki has stated that some of his earliest memories were of evacuating cities during World War II and the sites of destroyed cities after they had been bombed. Furthering the autobiographical element to this film, Mahito's father directs a company that manufactures plane parts, which were obviously in high demand during the war. Miyazaki's father did the same, and this obviously allowed both Miyazaki and Mahito to live relatively comfortable lives throughout the war, purely materially comfortable lives, that is. Obviously, Mahito is forever scarred by the horrors he bore witness to, and especially in the first act of the film, his emotional state of being as a result of those horrors is so effectively communicated through the language of cinema that despite virtually no dialogue being dedicated to explaining how he's feeling, I still felt like I understood exactly what was going on in his head. We get tons of very restrained shots that feel like they're deliberately holding in their own ability to be expressive, which obviously matches how Mahito tries to hold himself together in the face of the grief he experiences at the death of his mother, and the anger he feels towards his father for immediately starting a relationship with Mahito's aunt, aka the late mother's sister. I think it's pretty common for kids to try to hold in their emotions and not admit how upset they are when their parents seem like they're dealing with something more important. Like, a war. Trying not to pile your own problems onto someone else's problems is something a lot of us can relate to, and a lot of us know that it can be exhausting. I absolutely love this one cut where after arriving in this new bedroom for the first time, Mahito just collapses onto his bed and the camera holds on where his head used to be, so he ends up just falling out of the frame, as if he doesn't even have the energy to maintain an on-screen presence anymore. And then there's the cut where we see Mahito start a fight with some other kids at school, and again we get the static, pulled back, very formalistic camera position. It's as if even in this moment of acting out and trying to tell someone, anyone, that he is not doing well, he still does it while being mentally far away and disconnected from his own actions. And all this makes the moments where the Heron shows up so impactful because they finally give us these shots where the frame sweeps through the sky along with the Heron as he flies, like the camera is being freed from its shackles. It finally gives Mahito something to focus on instead of being consumed with grief, and it does essentially lead back to his mom when the Heron nebulously alludes to Mahito's mother being somewhere in this magical oceanic world. But now, Mahito is active. It helps that he believes Natsuko, his new stepmom, is somewhere down there as well. Point is, he has something motivating him. He is actively searching for his birth and stepmother in hopes that he can bring them back. And this is where, especially in retrospect, the film really starts to come into focus as to what it's all about. I heard this opinion expressed a couple times in conversation with friends who also watched the movie, which is that The Boy and the Heron is pretty confusing and opaque. It definitely does not hold the viewer's hand or feel much of a need to explain anything currently happening on screen. And I definitely feel that way too throughout the midsection of the film. Especially the whole time we are exploring the magical world, the film is just taking you on a ride, but as it nears its conclusion, it became clear to me at least that this movie is about coming to terms with your past, accepting the bad things that have happened to you, accepting that you're not perfect, and deciding to be a good person for your own sake and for everyone's sake. Mahito is offered these blocks that he is told he can use to supposedly build a better world than the one he currently lives in, a world free of malice, but Mahito turns down the offer, and I think he does this realizing that it would be better for him to work on himself before he tries to fix the world's problems. He decides that it would be best for him to foster the new relationships that have entered his life, those being his new mom Natsuko, who he has come to consider just as legitimately his mother as Mimi, his birth mom, his soon-to-be younger sibling, as well as the old ladies who work in the house he's moved into, who at this point are as much of a classic Ghibli feature as environmentalism and immaculately animated food porn, both of which make their way into this movie, of course. Moreover, the Heron gives us the whole children can see magic but adults can't because they've grown jaded and stopped believing speech, which just further solidifies the themes of the film by relating them to a broader subject. Just as Mahito must let go of the past in order to secure a more prosperous future, humanity itself must let go of the past and allow the future generation to make changes to the world. I will say though, I think it's very strange that for this to be the angle the film is going for, which I feel pretty confident it is, we don't really get to see the supposedly prosperous future. Right after Mahito returns to the real world, it flashes forward to the end of the war, and Mahito's relationship with his stepmom is obviously healthy, he has a younger sibling, everything just seems to be going well. And then the movie just ends. Obviously it didn't need anything else to get across its core message, but it does feel very abrupt. Like, it fades to black and then the credits just start, and I was like, oh, I guess it's over. Wait a second, is that Kenshi Yonezu? Kenshi Yonezu is the artist performing the theme song. I've been listening to his music for a while, so it's just funny for him to pop up where I wasn't expecting. And good for him, this is definitely one of the highest profile works he's had his name on. On the topic of the more odd or confusing decisions that were made with The Boy and the Heron, is the title The Boy and the Heron? If you didn't know, the Japanese title for this film, Kimitachi wa do ikuru ka, translates to How Do You Live in English. It does not mean The Boy and the Heron, and I have no idea how they landed on that name for English-speaking audiences because it is so much worse of a name. What were they thinking? Like, come on, How Do You Live? I literally got chills when I heard that the legend himself, Hayao Miyazaki, was coming out of a decade-long retirement to make a film called How Do You Live? God, that's such a good title. And it's like so much more resonant with the movie itself. It's like How do you live in a world outside of your control? How do you live in a world that takes the things you hold most dear to your heart away from you? And the whole movie is about answering that existential question. Just, oh my gosh, I wish they had gone with how do you live. Alright, time for the rapid fire segment of random standalone points I knew I wanted to touch on when watching this movie. 1, I totally ran up the stairs in my house on all fours, exactly like how Mahito does in the first scene. I still do sometimes, don't tell anyone. But yeah, this is immediately endearing and makes him feel like a real kid. 2, this film kinda continues the trend I noticed Ghibli movies doing, where the main character is a kid that gets taken in, usually straight up adopted by new guardians. Obviously here, the main character only gets one new parent as opposed to 2, but still, this is like definitely becoming a Ghibli-ism to me. 3, the scene cutting that huge fish open was incredible. Animation is still cool, guys, in case you forgot how cool animation is. It's like, really cool. Okay. To wrap up, I very much enjoyed my time with this movie. Like I said, it was definitely a little incomprehensible as I was watching it for the first time, and for that reason, I feel like it will probably have pretty high rewatch value, so I'll probably be giving it a second pass once it becomes available on streaming services. But as for right now, I'm feeling a strong 7, maybe a light 8 out of 10. Anyways, let me know what you thought of The Boy and the Heron down below, and I know that last time I said I would watch Panda Co Panda, but that was before this movie came out and took precedence, so next time I should be watching Panda Co Panda. And with that, thank you so much for watching, I hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll see you in the next one.